Hello and welcome to Keeping Up with Consecutives for the season finale. It's Go Big or Go Home, so we went big. We got Scott, and also we got an instructor as well.
Hello, welcome.
We have
Happy to see everyone. I'm Ronna.
we have Ronna, we have Scott. I'm Jacob, so this will be a very interesting season finale. Ronna was a highly anticipated guest. I kind of spread the word around a little bit, so the students are very excited to hear what she's got to say. Today we're going to be giving some introductions and kind of going into Ronna's education, her career path, kind of as a teacher, a principal, and a post-secondary instructor. It's a pretty packed resume, so we got a lot to cover. Yeah, let's get started. Ronna, what was your education?
Yeah, terrific. So I grew up here in St. Catharines. I went to the public school board in St. Catharines, graduated from Sir Winston High School. I then went to Brock for my undergraduate degree, and at that time, I'm not sure if it's still the same now, but you could apply to Teachers College after your general degree, which was a 3-year degree. So I applied at that time and didn't get into Brock, but I did get into Niagara University. So Brock was sort of looking for that 4th year piece, so I went to Niagara University where I got a Master's of Science in Education, and then I started teaching in the Lincoln County Board of Education, but now it's the District School Board of Niagara.
You're the class of 1992, correct?
1992. It was a full year program. We actually ended up with our master's degree after, which was a benefit at that time, especially moving forward in my career, because a master's is a criteria to become a principal.
Is it still on the criteria, probably?
It is still on the criteria to be a principal, yes.
Oh. So if you don't have a master's, how would you go about that? You just be kind of locked out of it, or?
No, you can definitely still go into being administration. You do 2 3-part specialists. So that's a second way of...
So like AQs and ABQs, basically.
Right, yeah.
So after you got your bachelor education, how did you get your first teaching gig, I guess?
Right, so it was interesting. I moved into teaching really quickly. Our program finished in December, and I was a secondary school teacher to start, and second semester was coming up in February, so they had a hiring period in January. So I applied in January, and I became an English and drama teacher at Grimsby Secondary School. I worked there for 1 semester, and the next semester I built up, and I had a full 3 courses at Beamsville District Secondary School and then 3 at Grimsby. I taught between the 2 schools for a little while and then finally became full-time at Beamsville, at which time we had a change in government and they initiated some freezes and cutbacks on education, and I was actually declared surplus. After about 4 or 5 years, I was declared surplus, which meant I wasn't going back to teaching for September. That's when I switched to elementary. I started supply teaching quite a bit in elementary and secondary. Elementary was safer, and so at the end of my year returning, can you imagine returning to supply teaching for a year? I had a choice between secondary and elementary, and I stuck with the elementary panel at that time.
And what grades did you teach when you were in, like, across, I guess, all of your teaching experience?
Yes, so in secondary I taught we had 13 at the time, so I taught the full slate. In elementary I taught grade 8 primarily. I switched partway through. I was 2 years grade 8, and then I became the grade 8 gifted teacher. We had a congregated gifted program, so I moved into grade 8 gifted. When I became a vice principal, then I started teaching all across the grades again, because most often vice principals do some teaching. So I picked up all the grades after that time. I would recommend to most people to start young and move older. Starting older and moving younger, there was some culture shock moments along the way. For sure, when I switched from secondary to grade 8, I was like, what's going on here? I have to be with them all day long and supervise them all the time. Yeah, so that was a bit of a shock.
Scott, do you have any interest in being like a principal or a vice principal in your future?
It's not something that I thought about coming into the teacher education program, but as I was kind of seeing in my practicum what the principal in the school did, it started to have some sort of appeal. I might just wait a bit and then kind of go the master's route, but just get a few years of teaching before I start approaching that.
One of the questions you had for me was about, do I have any advice for people as they're entering into their career? And one piece of advice I have is to consider, I know you're young and you're just excited to start teaching and get into the school and get an LTO and get a contract, but to stop at some point and think, what do I want at the end of my career? Where do I see myself? Because education offers lots of different opportunities for employees. And so 30 years, well, if you consider 30 years in maybe 5-year segments, and consider what would I maybe want to change every 5 years to end up where I would like to be in education. You could end up the director of a school board. You could end up a consultant in special education, in curriculum. You could end up, being part of the ministry and developing things with them. So there's so many opportunities, and when you're young and excited just about getting your first class, sometimes we don't stop and think, well, what do I want at the end, and how can I backwards design my career?
It's like she teaches a class or something.
Throwing in some lingo there, but backwards designing our career to make sure that we're hitting those. It's you would hate to at the end go, oh, I really wish I'd been an LRT. When at the beginning you sort of thought, well, special education's interesting me. Maybe I need to set the stage and take the courses to make sure that opportunity is available for me. So it's not just a principal. There's so many excellent things that you can do in education.
So you mentioned your jump from being a teacher to being a principal, or was it vice principal and principal?
Vice principal first.
And then a principal.
And then a principal after that.
So kind of in those types of jumps, you've mentioned you can jump from teacher to also like an LRT or something different than that. Would you say those jumps are there a lot of barriers to making those jumps between possibly senior positions or even like adjacent positions? Is it hard to make that jump?
Well, that's a great question. I think that if you're in a role and you're doing a really good job in that role, so you're a classroom teacher and you're doing a really good job as a classroom teacher, moving to the next step, making sure that you have the education. So you're not going to become a special education consultant if you haven't taken some special education courses or demonstrated that you're really good at working with students with special education needs. So the barriers are within your control. I think that if you have an interest in something and you take the right courses and you prove yourself by being professional in your day-to-day, those opportunities can definitely open up for you.
You've said that you've been a teacher, principal, vice principal, and a post-secondary instructor.
Ooh.
What motivated your transition between teacher to vice principal, or vice principal to principal, or principal to post-secondary instructor?
Yeah. Good question. So I tell this story sometimes about when I first became a teacher. I was quite young. I think I was 22 or something when I started.
Oh no,
And
same age as me.
Same age. Okay, so actually then not that young. And I started, and my family were all educators. And one of the first things my dad said to me was, you'll take these courses, and in 3 to 5 years, you can become a vice principal. I was like, no. Like, what are you talking about, Dad? Dads never know anything. And so I kind of laughed, and I thought that was really funny. But he was the one who started to get me thinking, well, what do I want to do in 3 to 5 years? And it didn't happen like that. It ended up being a slower journey into becoming a vice principal and a principal. But that was the trigger for me as to, right, I'm here now, and where do I see myself going, and what conditions do I need to set to make sure that I have some pathways and some opportunities open for me if I want to. One of the biggest factors, though, was when I was laid off from my first job. I loved my first job. I was working at a great high school. I loved the courses that I was teaching. I had an excellent basketball team. We were very successful, so I felt like I was contributing in a meaningful way to the community. And when I was laid off, it's just numbers. It had nothing to do with your performance. And I remember that was a moment where I thought, oh, well, I guess this change has been forced on me, and how can I turn lemons into lemonade? Like, how can I approach this in a more positive way than feeling like I was victimized? Instead, how could I turn it around? And actually the move to elementary, while I said was a little bit shocking at first, it was probably the best thing that I ever did.
And how do you prepare for these different roles and these different age groups? Like, you go from secondary to elementary, and I think of like me who did kindergarten, then my next placement will be in a grade 4, 5, 6 class. Like, how do you prepare for these different age groups and then prepare for teaching us as teacher candidates?
The same way you did, probably. Like, did you spend lots of time at night getting ready for your lessons for your class the next day? Yeah, it doesn't change very much. So when I was hired at Brock, I was hired when I was still a principal. It became a 2-year program, and they started offering evening and nighttime courses. And so there was some openings, and so I applied, and I was teaching the law and professionalism class. And it was 6 3-hour courses, so 18 hours. I spent 218 hours getting ready for that, right? So I had to read the textbook and then read it a few times to make sure that I really understood the content, process the syllabus, look at the resources that were shared with me, and then kind of decide how I was going to approach teaching it actually in my class. And so I felt like a first-year teacher.
And like in what year of teaching? Probably like your 10th year of being in the education system?
Oh, no, that was in 2016. And I retired in 2022. So 25 years in the education system. I was a first-year teacher again. So I was super excited. I was very nervous, but I always think being nervous isn't terrible because it helps to make you sharp. I think my biggest curriculum change was when I switched from secondary to grade 8. I remember about my 3rd week, we were going through the social studies curriculum, and we were coming up to sort of the story of Louis Riel, and me thinking, don't know much about Louis Riel, I need to. And there was no internet at that time. There was no Googling and getting the ChatGPT version of what our students need to know about Louis Riel. So it was investing that time, making sure talking to other people, finding out how they were approaching it, stealing people's really good ideas, right? The same
We've
thing
been doing that the whole semester.
That's right. It's going to be the same experience. It's the first-year teaching experience. And it's joyful, and it's fun, and it's nerve-wracking, and it's exciting, and it's tiring, and all those things all at the same time.
You heard it first. After you've been teaching for 25 years, you can still find ways to experience challenges and such. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Good to know that doesn't change.
Good to know it'll be consistent. Be consistent.
Well, like you, because I know everybody worries about the amount of time they wrote, especially doing lesson plans during their placement. And you definitely develop a system to make it less challenging, especially when you repeat a grade, you refine things, you get rid of things that didn't work well, you bring in new things that keep it fresh and keep it real. But for sure now, I'm in my 3rd year, so the amount of preparation is reduced, but it's still considerable, but it is reduced. And that'll be your experience going into teaching too. I'm confident of that, unless you change grades every year or something.
That was a concept that was introduced to me in my placement. Was we had one teacher that was retiring in the school, and so then everyone, like, I think most of my placement were talking about, oh, well, if I go to this grade, then you can go to this grade, and like they were talking about all these like switching through grades. And I remember my AT was like, I don't really want to switch from kindergarten, because then you have to kind of prepare, and kindergarten is so different from everything else, but you then have to prepare for a whole new age group and like all of the resources you have. Like, you can use some, but like some of them are so new and some of them aren't going to be relevant to a new grade. So,
I was talking at the beginning about sort of your career in 5 years. Sometimes the change is just that. It's just a grade. And that can be enough that it brings back some life, it gets you sharp again, it gets you digging into the different curriculum. The change doesn't have to be from teaching to being a superintendent or the director of the school board. The change can just be changing the division, changing your school. You learn a lot when you change schools. It becomes a whole different experience and makes you better. I think when you bring all that variety of experiences into your teaching, that it ultimately helps you as a professional, makes you better.
Yeah, in my all my teaching philosophies I had to write for like cohort class and other classes, it was writing about like your teaching style, and I'm like, my teaching style, you may have been able to tell by how I operate, but it's like, how can I engage the students, and also how can I engage myself? If I'm teaching the same thing for like 3 years, how will I keep myself engaged and still, I don't want to do the same PowerPoints every year for 3 years, which is why I want to do so many AQs of drama, chemistry, biology. Like, maybe I'll change that on the way, but there's so many options for me to do, and I'm thinking, even in that 5-year chunk, it's like, I can't imagine doing the same thing for 10 years, quite frankly, like the same grade for 10 years. But by force or by you suggesting it, they'll probably change it up somehow, some way, and you'll be thrown into a new scenario. So
I think it's less common now, the idea of becoming a grade 8 teacher and remaining a grade 8 teacher for 30 years. Just our communities are changing, the numbers, schools grow or schools close, or there seems to be more situations that lead to teachers having to change what their situation is at that time. But yeah, no, there's also nothing wrong with being an excellent grade 8 teacher for 30 years. I don't want anybody to, listen to this and think that you have to have all these changes. If you're doing a really good job for 13-year-olds for 30 years, keep doing it.
yeah, you might have to do some self-reflection, which I know we do rarely in teachers college. Just kidding, we do it almost every day. But yeah, you got to do a lot of reflection. For me, might not work for what worked for Scott. So you have to figure out individually, don't compare yourself to others, figure out what works for you specifically. So you mentioned that you were an instructor at Brock. As a lot of Brock candidates are watching this, a little selfishly, what do you enjoy most about working with the teacher candidates at Brock?
I love it. I find the teacher candidates at Brock very inspiring. And selfishly, I feel like being around you sort of keeps me current and young, I'd like to think. And in the know a little bit. I really enjoyed, I told you I had a little sneak peek at your podcast, and I felt like they were super interesting to me as an instructor. We talk all the time about know your learners, and I found I learned a lot about sort of your generation or the group that's coming in and coming through now.
Well, I guess essentially it's like I've unintentionally made a very in-depth class profile.
A very in-depth club. I need to see everybody. I hope I teach everyone again, because I know so much more about the students. But just your take on things, and truthfully, watching some of the things on the podcast filled me with a little bit of joy. There's hope. Sometimes when you talk to people not in education, they're down on the youth of today, and I don't feel that at all. I actually feel like we're in a good place with people who are coming into the professional with the right intentions, excited about doing good things for kids and helping make sure they learn and that they're welcome and they have a sense of belonging. I think that's the piece that I enjoy the most about being here at Brock.
Scott, what would you say about the experience within all these classes? Are you enjoying yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really enjoying it. I find there's so many opportunities to just be a sponge and just absorb information, not just from instructors, but from our peers as well. I feel like there's not really a competitiveness of, oh, well, I want to do better than you.
Coming from medical science? Holy cow.
Yeah, I feel like we're all kind of there to help each other. We share resources. I'm pretty sure we have a Google Drive where people were just uploading lesson plans and things that they were using during practicum, so that we just have access to what other people are doing and helping each other. I have so many people's numbers that if I'm confused on something, I can just kind of text a friend and say hey, what are you doing for this? What are your thoughts? And we kind of all collaborate and help each other out. So it's been a really great experience learning from everyone that I'm meeting and just hearing so many different perspectives. And I'm coming from Toronto, so it's very different hearing what people's experiences in St. Catharines are compared to what I'm used to in Toronto or what I have heard from some of my friends in other areas. So it's very different hearing everyone's perspective.
And I know the program, it goes from being sort of an academic program. Most people come out of academic programs which give you a general preparation for lots of different things, and into a program that's really designed to give you the opportunities that are directly related to pretty much classroom teaching at the point that you're at. And that's a big shift. And so even as an instructor, figuring out what's the balance between the theory, and especially in some of the special education courses that I'm involved with, we go dig into that educational psychology piece of it, and then how to balance that with the practice and making sure that we're arming you with it as students. But it is still theoretical until you get into that first placement, which is the best, because then some of the things that percolated or you wondered about in your courses for the first 12 weeks, and you get into your placement and you either see them come to life, or maybe you disagree with some of the things, they told us this and I didn't really see that. That's all part of working through the process of figuring out how you want to be a good teacher, I think.
Yeah. And so we do one practicum in our first year, but in our second year, we have 2 practicums and less class time. Ideally, well, not ideally, but in theory, less theory to work through and learn about. So kind of transitioning a little bit, Ronna, you've had the opportunity, I believe, to see both first year and second year teacher candidates. How do you think they grow over the 2 years? Anything specific?
The biggest growth is after placement. That's where I see sort of this metamorphosis of the students. People come in. I remember my first year teaching, I taught APO3 on I think it was a Friday course. So everybody had started on Tuesday, so 4 days in. And the group were consecutive students, so they didn't have that sort of culture and community that might have been established in the concurrent program. And I just remember the look on their faces, and remember, I'm new too, so we're all new, sort of looking at each other. And I felt like the things I was saying to them, I was like, is anybody understanding? Are we? And so they went off to their placement and then came back and were just transformed, right? And saying things, oh, you said this, and I didn't really know what you meant by a visual schedule, or using pics to communicate. And then they go off and they see it in their placement, and they come back excited, exuberant, with a depth of understanding of what they're getting into, start to apply some of the things that they're learning. But did you love that day that you came back?
Oh, the day we came back, yeah. People have talked about how everybody was just incredibly wanted to share all their findings, what worked, what didn't, funny stuff, some happy stuff. It was a roller coaster day.
The other day is the day that you get your placement.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a complete write-off the day you get your placement. I was teaching that day, and they started to come in, and I'm always like, have your technology, right? And I could tell something was going on in the class. So finally I said, what is it? Our placements are coming in. So then
close the laptop.
I thought, well, I might as well
over.
just turn the slideshow off now, because it's all over. But sometimes for our associate teachers and the people in the schools, I don't know if they recognize what an exciting day that is. Everybody starts, going on Facebook and finding their AT and seeing what courses they've had and how far the drive is going to be and who else is with them and all that exciting stuff. So that day is a big day, and then the day that everybody comes back from placement is such an exciting day too. Sometimes I find so I'm not an expert. I have to sort of preface that. I'm fairly new to this. I had my second year cohort this year. So last year they were my first year cohort, this year second. So I don't have a range of comparative information. I know that cohort fit that pattern. So came in and did the 12 weeks, wrote your standpoint. Everybody wondered about the standpoint, and they're like, oh, the standpoint's sort of helpful actually. And then which I actually think is the greatest assignment, but then they went off on their placement, came back super excited from placement, all that energy. And then it is a little bit hard to come back into school when you've had that little touch of being out there and being in the job, right? So you transition back, come back to school, get your school feedback on. I was talking to somebody who said they were actually relieved to come back to school because it was actually a little bit of a break compared to how hard they were working when they were in their placement. And then they come back as second-year students. They bring the experiences. They're just as excited to get ready for their last 2 placements. The last placement's an interesting one because you only have 5 cohort classes next year. I think you have 3. You go on placement, you come back and you have 2, and then you go on placement. There isn't a reconnection after that except for graduation.
Yeah. I think we're done like mid-April, then you go home.
Yeah, or you hope that you're getting on a supply list or getting
LTO or something.
Right,
yeah.
actually starting. Some people finished on Friday and on the Monday they were doing supply teaching, right? Yeah, that's really quick. That second year goes really fast.
That is scary.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, quite frankly.
I remember thinking the second year students, like in my cohort class, we had a group of, I think, like 4 second year students come in and just talk to us about their placement experience. And I remember thinking, like, what did I get into? I was like, they were like, oh yeah, you have to do this and like make sure you have your resources banked and make sure that you're doing this and get involved in the school and do all these things. And I remember we walked away and it was the same day as our mini lessons.
Oh.
And me and my group like came together to start our mini lessons, and I think we spent like 5 minutes just being like, what was that? Like we were so like scared and overwhelmed, and it was like so weird. And then we start placement and everything kind of slowed down, and we were like there was so much confidence, I think, coming back from the placement. Like it was weird. It was a weird transition of, okay, well, I'm not teaching now. I'm back to being the student. But I felt so much more confident coming out of placement, coming out of my first placement. And like you can make so many connections to the content that you're learning. Like you can think, oh, like I had a student that did these things, or like this is how I could have approached teaching this lesson. Like there's so many things that it just all kind of clicks after the first placement.
Well, and I think we talked about the our last assignment in AP35, which is that simulation of the school-based team and how much everyone had to contribute to the cases that were presented to them because of their experiences. That assignment wouldn't go like that if it was week 11 of the first term.
I was imagining myself in that meeting. I was getting like, okay, what can we do for Dana as an imaginary person? What can we do for Dana? What can we do for her? This worked in my project, and we can incorporate this. I was getting passionate about it because I had seen how beneficial an in-school team could be in deciding how to deal with behaviors.
Yeah, our group, I thought the group in particular did a really great job of sort of owning their student, being passionate about their student,
advocating for them.
Yeah, and then sort of, we role play a little bit, so that little bit of role play that came in the making of but the suggestions were sincerely strong, professional decisions that we would make for students. And again, I don't think if that particular type of assignment had happened earlier. In my career, I've been really involved with mentoring. And with mentoring, so mentoring new teachers, so you get hired and you have to be part of the NTIP program, New Teacher Induction Program. That's a ministry program. And during the NTIP program, we would run a session on assessment. And the group would say, well, we should have had that sooner.
We should have learned about that in Teachers College.
No. Well, you do, but you don't personalize it until the practice. You learn the theory part of it, and until your placement, when you start to put that into place. So then they have that. So then the next session is on classroom management. They say, well, that should have been sooner. But there's no time to do it all sooner. It really does have to sort of parse it. All of those things are very important, but they sort of have to have a pace and parse themselves out. And I feel like that's a little bit about when people go into their first practicum and they say, well, we didn't learn this. And it's like, yet.
You got to add yet to the end.
Right? But you're going to, it's going to be part, trust the program. The program's very thoughtful. The people who sort of put it together, to make sure that it meets the Ontario College of Teachers requirements, but they put a lot of thought and care and consideration in place to do our best at where you're at now to get you ready to start. And then you'll learn more when you start. You can't learn it all before you get into it.
Yeah. Did you have any, were you able to mentor any educators while you were a principal, vice principal, teacher?
When you become a principal, quite often you'll get involved in committees or supplementary work with other groups of principals. So mine, a big part of my contribution that way as a principal was around mentoring. So at first it was teacher mentoring and developing the NTIP program and working on that. Then I became a principal and vice principal mentor, sort of part of the administrative mentoring program that our school board offers, and I'm sure most school boards offer. And now actually as a retired principal, I'm still involved in doing some. The nice thing about it is like you get all this experience 30 years and then you get to go back and sort of share or listen or problem solve with people who are just getting excited and getting into it the first time. So tremendous, I would say that would probably be my passion. Even just little things as becoming, when I was a principal, mentoring teachers to consider becoming an instructional coach. Having vice principals that I'm working with, hopefully to get them to be principals. That whole sort of always forward moving, always helping people to be the best that they could be. I buy into that. I like that.
We touched on transitioning from a first-year teacher candidate to a second-year teacher candidate. So going from that second-year teacher candidate that you're done in April, and then on the Monday you could have a job. Do you have any advice for any second-year teacher candidates that are about to become teachers in the workforce?
I do.
Perfect.
And so I don't want it to sound preachy, or this is sort of things that I've collected and landed on that I think might be helpful. Again, in theory, it's that idea of all that stuff is coming at you, and then you get in the placement and you start to work through it. But I do a presentation for some other faculties called What Your Principal Wants You to Know. So it's from my lens as a principal, working with a teacher coming into the profession, maybe the things that I wish I had sort of known when I started it off. And so I have like a slide deck on that, but I didn't, bring my slide deck, but I did write it down.
Prepared.
Sort of my key thinking. I know, a little preparation, but I thought, because it's like, that's a little overwhelming, don't you think?
A little bit.
It's a little bit much. So I thought maybe I would sort of read a few, and then the two of you could decide which one you want to talk more about. Things to think about from Ronna as you are entering the profession. Ready? I'm just going to read a few, and then you say which one you want to discuss more, or your thoughts on it.
Okay.
One is to start acting professional now.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
I've
said this before, haven't
yes.
I? Yes.
Well, this is specifically for me. I don't know about Scott, but for me, my professionalism, I feel many teachers confuse trying to engage the class with a lack of professionalism. How do you manage being professional while also being engaging? Because in some classes, they love how engaging my presentations are. In other classes, they kind of wish that I would be less casual and more impromptu when talking to other teacher candidates, more professional when talking to other teacher candidates. So.
Interesting.
It's a dilemma.
Right. How have you processed that feedback?
I've processed that feedback as... She's good. She's good. It's like
that's like kind of interesting feedback.
It's like the Charlie Brown thing. You give her a nickel and she's giving you advice back. On my, my mental health toolkit I presented, I had feedback, very casual presentation style, tried to be more professional, while my other group members were also relatively engaging, but they got 5 out of 5 because they were very professional. They didn't make jokes or something. For example, there's like a lion sound effect in the video. I'll be like, whoa, or something like that, But it's just it depends on your audience. So I think as long as I'm designing my presentations towards the audience that they're intended for, and like it's appropriate for the audience, then I feel like I'm okay, because my personality, I'm always going to try to engage as the top priority. In my class, I think it worked really well. I didn't overstep any boundaries. My AT had very good feedback for that. But especially in this Teachers College program, where you have teacher candidates in the program really enjoy, they agree that it's engaging, but then people that are saying it's not engaging, you need to be more professional. I just have to personally realize, I think you got to find a balance, and I don't know how to find that balance.
Yeah, I think the key to it is that you're thinking about it.
To be mindful about your professionalism.
Well, and you've thought about it. I think probably part of it was that you're disappointed if the assessment didn't come back the way you were hoping it to.
Yeah.
Let's think about this though, about things that we do to students in our classrooms too. So you're going to be teachers. If you were in your class, how do you manage that? As you're a student and being part of the education system and working with different instructors, and we know there's all different styles and approaches to teaching. And thinking, is that an approach and a style that I want to adopt, that I want to incorporate as part of what I'm doing? The fact that you're reflecting on it will make you better. Remember we talked about the other day, it's not just the good things, it's not just the good placements that make you better. Sometimes some things might happen in placement that actually make you think a lot more about the things that you're doing with students. So,
Yes.
right? So I would say then that all ties into assessment in that is the criteria clear? Does the criteria have professionalism as part of the criteria? I think that you start to, I'm sort of muddled in what I'm trying to say right now, but the idea that you were learning.
I'm testing out what works for me, kind of.
But the grades didn't match the amount that maybe you're learning.
Yes.
So how do we assess learning?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? That's why we have a whole class for that. So.
Right. It is the $1 million question, though. That idea of, I as an instructor want to make sure that my students are learning. And I first and foremost know that I won't be for everyone. But I trust that within the program, some of the courses along the way are going to appeal to everyone. Everyone's going to get what they need out of it. It doesn't have to be from me. We all need it to come to us different ways. But I want to make sure that I take the syllabus, I look at what the criteria in the syllabus is, and I want to make sure that you learn it. And that gets balanced with students getting marks. It's a complex thing. Can you learn a lot in something and not maybe only get 14 out of 15?
Yeah.
Jacob, if I can just throw you a quick compliment. We've seen a lot of presentations from you, from a lot of other people in our program, and a lot of the presentations, all of the presentations are really great. But I think you find a good balance of, at least for me as someone that, like, learning should be fun. Like, learning should engage the students. And when you did, like, your movement breaks, and, like, you kind of did a few things where, like, we got up and moved, or, like, you had these quizzes and, like, these things that made it fun.
I made one of the things competitive instead of just recreational.
Yeah, so you've really shared all the information. Like, I think when I look at the requirements of the assignments, like, in my opinion, you hit all of those things, but you make it really interesting to hear the information. Like, anyone can kind of stand there and read off a sheet of paper, but, like, I think there's a confidence to you having fun, you being what I guess some people would say unprofessional.
Yeah.
I think you make it just such a cool experience, and the information sounds different, even if it could be the exact same presentation as someone else.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about be professional now, I mean take a good look at what's expected for teachers. What is the behavior that's expected of teachers, and start practicing that now. I was talking to an experienced teacher about that, and she said, I never thought of myself as a professional when I was a student. I was just
It's like you're teaching kids, like, it's like you're playing with robots one day. Like, it's a professional job, but some things you do, they're little silly and shenanigans. So
yes, your banter or your relationship with students might be, but the professional part of that would be rooted in the curriculum.
Yeah.
And your professional knowledge and your professional practice, which comes out of the standards of practice for teachers. I know I'm getting like blah, 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 but there are standards for teachers, and start practicing them now.
The main idea, though, was kind of like we have these regulations set out for us for many types of things.
Yeah.
So instead of me wondering in my mind if I'm being professional and if they're correct, or if my perspective maybe is still all right, I can go access this resource and look at some definitions of professionalism. And if I believe I'm encompassing it, then I'm probably all right.
Amazing. That's amazing. That's exactly what I want you to land on. That if you're wondering, probably there's some guidance somewhere. Generally speaking, the answer's out there. Am I using my social media properly? Am I using my phone? The school boards have social media guidelines. Take a look at them. The Ontario College of Teachers has some amazing professional guidelines that you'll look at in second year around safety in the gym, safety in the science lab, around the use of social media, around reporting to facts. They have clear expectations for specific topics, and it's usually the topics that people get themselves into trouble with. So they try to clear them up a little bit. But that's next year's class. Yeah. That's law
professionalism?
Yeah. It's a really interesting class. I think that you'll really like it. And that's where you start to dig into what are the laws, or what are the rules, or what are the contract expectations that I need to be following to make sure that I don't get into trouble as a teacher.
Awesome.
It's called Scared Straight. Their class should be Scared Straight of teaching. No, it's just, if you know what's expected, then you can do it, right?
All right, so there's the first question on your list.
Well, that didn't go. That was like, okay, so I'm going to read a few and then you're going to decide, okay? So I already mentioned this one. I recommend for people to consider planning their career from the end backwards. It won't necessarily go the way you plan, but it indicates that you're starting to think about your career as a whole.
Actually, yeah, if I could touch on that for 1 second. Backwards design, I guess from your perspective, you could also, that backwards design could also start before you even enter post-secondary, because you have to determine your teachables. For example, for me, I didn't know if I wanted to teach chemistry or not. So in my 4th year, I had to squeeze in 2 biochems at the last second. But now I'm eligible to teach chemistry instead of having to come back in 3 years. Or even when you finish your 2nd year, then you can take AQs. Like, do you want to do a master's program instead of an AQ to maybe become a principal and go right to A4? Or do you want to do 5 AQs? Like, you have to decide which ones you want. And especially because some AQs will stick with you.
That's excellent. And that's a lot to ask of a grade 12 student.
A lot.
Right, to start to, and of course we have to have room for deviate. I mean, you deviate. You took a left turn sort of from what you were originally thinking of doing when you started. So there are ways to catch up, or to don't feel like if you're off the track that there aren't ways that you can get yourself back onto a certain track if that's what you're thinking about doing. This one, talk positively about your profession, your students, and your colleagues.
That has been the underlying theme of this entire podcast series. Right from the beginning, I wanted to keep it positive because, to quote Ronna in 2025, you look to your left, you look to your right, they could be your future employers or coworkers in the future. You never know what position somebody will end up in. Not that that should determine if you're nice to them or not, but just speaking positive will get other people to speak positive as well. It'll be like, it's like contagious.
Yeah, develop a relationship with people. And you have varying degrees of relationships, but I was thinking of that one the other day. Look to your left, look to your right. The person beside you might teach your children one day.
Oh,
right?
no.
Right?
Wow.
Sometimes
that's a lot of thinking for today. I don't know.
We start to think ahead a little bit like that. But yeah, always things come around. So you might think, oh, I'm only going to see this person for 2 years right now as I'm in the Faculty of Education. But then 6 years from now, suddenly you're looped back in again. And it's nice to know that you've developed a nice relationship with them when you were with them 2 years ago, that you might be able to reconnect and growing on together then. So talking positively about everything we do, it's easy to flip into the negative.
Yeah, that's not even like teacher college or teacher education specific. Like, I'm in medical science. For all I know, one of my classmates is going to be my doctor in a year.
Right.
So.
Exactly. So
or like,
be nice to them.
Or like, I don't know, someone in business is going to like be giving you the new iPhone or something. Like, who knows?
It's also just a mindset. Like, anything, if you think, oh, this sucks, this is negative, all that, like, that's what it is. If it's your education, if it's your occupation, if it's whatever, if you're thinking positively, even socially, if you're thinking positively about your experiences, they're going to feel more positive. Obviously, everyone has like their negative things that they have and they go on in their life, but to talk positively about other people, like, it's just building yourself up. And just kind of helping yourself out no matter what setting you're in.
And I said in public, talking positively, you'll still need to have the person that you debrief something that doesn't go right with, right? And that's private, and you decide if it's a colleague or a mentor or
your dog,
or your
like,
dog,
who knows?
or your wife, right? Like, you decide, your partner, you decide sort of where and when that happens, but you do need that. But overall, working on being positive.
In my practicum, my teacher was, they'd be like, oh, that student was a lot today, but tomorrow there's a lot of positivity I found.
Yeah.
Scott, did you experience any positivity or even negativity in your practicum?
There was a lot of positivity, but there were some times where
It seeps through.
Yeah, there was just like some negativity that would just kind of seep into, oh, like I had this student, it was difficult, like now I'm gonna have
Hard
this
day.
next period, like I'm gonna have another student, like kind of just, it felt like they were kind of just piling everything on top of each other rather than looking at the, like, I had this difficult student, but like I had this other student that mastered their multiplication. Like,
Yeah. You know, like a lot of teachers leave the profession in like the first 5 years, and it could all be because of your mindset. Like, who knows if that leaving in the first 5 years is because they're talking negative every day, or if it's because they're actually like overwhelmed.
Or
Who
maybe
knows?
maybe it's the wrong career.
Maybe it's the wrong career.
It's a hard career, right? And you talked about that backwards design, and then you're caught up in it, and so you become a teacher. And not everybody should be a teacher. Not everybody should be a doctor, right? Like, that's okay too. And so that statistic for leaving after 5 years, I think that's a really American statistic. I'm not sure it's probably the same. Probably most people leave within the first 5 years, but I don't think it's to the same degree as in the US, where it's a whole different
Yeah.
ball of wax.
It could also be like, I don't know, we're getting a little controversial now, but a lot of people, you know, I'm at my camp, I see a lot of people that are in Aurelia, like 2 or 3 of them talking like, yeah, you know, I'm going to be a teacher, I get summers off. And I'm thinking, okay, but I want to do it because I want to not entertain, but like engage students and
Yeah,
like get
you
them
want them
hyped
to
about
learn.
stuff. I feel like I'll frame this more positively. The teachers with the more positive mindset likely will last longer.
And you'll see when you start teaching, like, first of all, that's when you go back to talking positively. So suddenly you're out and about and somebody starts, oh, you get 6 weeks off in the summer, must be nice. That's when you really have to practice talking positively.
Professionalism.
Right, about it, because you'll run into people who kind of slag what you've chosen to do, right? So that's where you really practice being professional. But having the recovery and the recuperation time in the summer is important when we're working with students all the time. Like, I'm a big believer in, and I think we're getting better at our mental health and our physical health, and realizing that teaching is a job that requires a lot of energy, right? And a lot of stamina, and you have to feel good. So you have to make sure that you use that time in the summer really wisely as well. All right, so I had clean up your social media.
Scott, you clean?
my social media is clean. I actually have a friend that pretty much, like, for no reason other than just entertainment, does all of my posting, but like does a social media, like, is a social media manager. So pretty much everything I post has been like pretty much PR.
Like, you got your own
PR approved.
You have your own PR team is what you're saying here.
It's like weird, funny things. So if you follow me on Instagram, like, you can.
That's a little plug.
Can't find that. Just a little plug.
So that idea of, sometimes we forget, I mean, it's so accessible, and so you've applied for a job. Principals and vice principals are very social media savvy too.
Yeah. If you thought you were good at stalking your friend's ex, then think about how a principal would be.
Excellent. Well, we're hiring for people to do good things for students, and so some principals will look up, and if they find you and there's something questionable on there, it could have them think twice, right? So I think parents will look you up, your students will look you up. They will dig and try to find as much information out about you as possible. So again, making sure you're following the standards of the profession with whatever you're putting up there. And if you're not, make it super private.
Yeah.
I know a lot of teachers have, or like, I guess teachers that are my friends that are teachers, have a teaching account, and it's like, it's public, and like, it's basically just like, we're doing this in the class. Like, it's very like.
It's not for making TikToks about your students' kindergarten work or kindergarten drawings.
It's not like a personal profile.
Influencer. It's not like an influencer or something.
Yeah, it's just like kind of things that if you look up this, a parent can look you up and see like, oh, like, this is what's happening in the classroom, and of course, no students in the pictures, like.
And that would be another example of things changing too, because when I was a principal near the end, we used Twitter a lot to positively promote the good things that were happening in our school. We used it almost as a supplement to a newsletter so that parents could get a glimpse into the good things that were happening in our school every day. There's been a tremendous shift away from all of that now. any type of student pictures is really cautioned on any type of social media like that. So I think teachers, again, making sure that just because 5 years ago you were doing it, making sure that you're staying in tune with what your board and what the policy is around posting kids' work, those types of things. I do think they're quite a bit tighter now. I think there's been some big changes.
A culture shift
in
even.
3 years. It's only been 3 years. It hasn't been 8 years.
Yeah.
The darn 8-year culture shift. I could just be making that up too, or somebody might have told me that. Okay, so clean up your social media. I put this one for you.
Uh-oh.
Know your standpoint. What do you believe about students? How they learn? Yourself? What do you bring? How can it change and grow and evolve? I think that assignment, when you first get it, as high achieving students, you're worried about what mark you're going to get on it. But it's way deeper than that.
Because we have to refine it so many times. It's like by the third time, I can kind of make it more personal and more, I'd say, realistic.
I think it could be even refined again and be part of your cover letter for when you're, it's almost a philosophy statement or that type of thing. How do you weave that into when you actually go to apply?
Are you telling me that Teachers College is preparing us for the real world?
We're trying to. We really are. And I know I hear the grumbling at how is it going to get marked, and it's my thoughts but it's the thinking that goes in behind that that's really important, I think, in your own growth and development. Whether you get 13 out of 15 on it or perfect on it, it is deeper than what do you believe? What do you think about students? What do you think about education? What biases do you bring? How they shifted and changed as you become experienced with working with different race, different religion, different culture in your classroom. How are you growing and making sure that we do work to make sure all of our students belong? There is some good stuff in that standpoint. So know that. I say this, never stop planning. Don't go into a class not planned.
Okay.
And ready.
Don't write your lesson plan on a sticky note?
Sticky note. I think that no matter how experienced you get, I think even if it's just opening up last year's lesson, going through it, making sure the links work, right? Making sure things are still relevant. The degree of planning can be different, but making sure when you're stepping in front of students that you're ready. It's
such a simple piece of advice, but yet we still see that unpreparedness coming into play. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but in one of our classes, it's we started watching a political debate when we were supposed to be watching a read-along of a children's book. And I'm like, what is going on here? But it's because they didn't know what the content was beforehand. And nobody realized until 2 minutes in. And we're like, I don't know if this is a children's book, but.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's that idea of, that's a hard one too. I don't know that those ads and things that pop up before and after when you've got the clip all ready to go. There are tools, education tools, I think, that help snip that out, those things out. But when do not great things happen? When you're unprepared. When you're unprepared.
One of the stories in my practicum, I talked to one of the other teachers across the hall, and he was saying how one of the supply teachers came in one day and he had he had some lesson plan, and then he didn't prep it enough beforehand, or maybe he had done it or maybe it was some other teacher who had done a lesson the year before. Then he started playing it, some TED Talk. First word, just F word. It was about some inspirational thing, but it was still then he got suspended or something for that. So
yeah, it had a consequence.
Yeah,
probably for that. But if you're as prepared as you can be, you minimize it. But there are still things that can happen.
Yeah.
But
do you have any suggestions for organizing these plans? I know I spent so much time creating plans, and I have all these resources and things, and I feel like I'm just gonna lose them in my digital. I have different folders and stuff on my computer.
In Google?
Google and kind of on my saved onto my desktop as well. But I feel like there's just gonna be a point where I'm gonna forget that exists, and I'm not gonna think to go back that far. Do you have any systems?
Well, I think links are your friend. That's the first thing. How do you organize?
My practicum, my teacher was very paper-based. I am not paper-based, unfortunately, but I wanted to try it out, see how it worked. So I got a binder. I was putting all the papers in, and I had to find some assessment data. So I'd flip it to the page, open the assessment data. But then I'd be going around doing anecdotal notes, and I'd be like, I could do this on an iPad so easily. So one of my things I added to my standpoint was don't be afraid to try new methods, keep evolving. Like, okay, paper doesn't work, I'm not gonna keep trying paper. Digital might not work, I might not do digital. I'll have to find some in between and just keep adapting as I need. Like, I don't have to do the same thing forever, so.
Yeah, I think that is going to be 30 years of trying to figure that one out. I know some people, that's makes you feel good, doesn't it? Even me organizing my courses here, so I taught the law and professionalism. I think I taught it 5 times. And like I'll have week 1, slide deck 3, version 9. Like sometimes I can't even keep track of, and then I make these folders to try to just capture this year's, and then I search and I pull up the wrong one. I totally feel your pain. Like I do think that there has to be a good way to, paper might be it. A shout out to Sean, who does everything on paper.
Whew, Sean is, I want to delve inside Sean's brain at one point because I just want to know everything that he knows.
I mean, he's one of the, I think probably the first student I've seen as part of this program who came with a binder and had the syllabus all, this was on the first day, had the syllabus all printed out and was ready to take his notes. If that works for you, then do it. Like, there's nothing wrong with having paper, having binders, having notebooks, that type of thing. But when we talk about assessment and we're trying to gather conversations and observations, like what is the efficient way to do that? I don't have the answer for that.
Yeah.
I wish I did.
That's the $2 million question.
I shared with you this year how I've been gathering your participation comments each week. I think I shared this spreadsheet with you where I could write if you were in class and if you met your goal or not, and then I could put the comment in the square each day, which I feel like is the best I've ever done. Like I feel like I'm sort of onto something, but it still took, like there was still quite a bit of effort to read each piece each week, go in, right, and record that. So is there an easier way?
Who knows? I think you just gotta keep trying them out. Gotta try out what works. Like there's new apps. There's new, like Microsoft Excel was probably new at one point. You just gotta figure out what works. Keep adapting it. A lot of people use like Notability or like Good Notes or something. Planboard.
Have you seen Planboard, which is sort of one for teachers? It's got the curriculum's all linked into it already. I've never used it as a teacher, but I do know that some teachers who use it, it's like everything is in Planboard. You might have to pay for it, but I think the people who sort of invest in it think it's really great. So, email is for good news only. Scott was misbehaving in class today. That's not an email. That's a phone call. An email about Scott's misbehavior in class loses tone and context. And so you write, he kept getting out of his seat. Like, first of all, it would be much shorter as a phone call, but we get nervous because the parents might challenge us in that. But when they start challenging us in email,
that's when it gets messy.
It's when it gets really messy. So they send back a big reply, and then you reply to their reply, and now you're upset because they're upset, and now everybody's upset, and it doesn't lead anywhere good ever. Well, I just need to explain it differently, and you start typing again, and then they come back again. Well, he told me that, right? It just becomes ugly quickly, and it also becomes screenshotable.
You got to be very like PR approved.
Yeah. So what you reply can become a out of context screenshot that they put on Facebook and say, Scott said this about my kid today. I just think, just call or greet if they're young, right? They're picking them up at the door. Just have the conversation with them there. Always talking about what happened today, about how we're going to work to do better the next day. But
so what you're saying is we should work in collaboration with parents to manage students' mental health and behavior.
I heard you just did a presentation on that.
I have a personal inquiry project on that I've actually posted on YouTube as well that people can go watch. I had some things about phrasing your concerns, having a plan, and not assuming what the cause of the behavior could be. A lot of good information in there, so go look at it if you want.
That's a good one, not assuming what the cause. Yeah.
And a very engaging professional video as well.
A very engaging and professional video.
Professional presentation. I love how that loops back in again.
Yes.
Admit your mistakes. Explanations are not necessarily excuses. and apologies go a long way. You know what really surprises students is when you apologize to them. I think Rita Pearson said that. Have you watched that Every Child Deserves a Champion video?
I believe
With
so,
Rita
yes.
Pearson's. She's a really captivating speaker, but she talks about teaching the lesson completely the wrong way, and then the next day she went in and apologizes to the class, and they were shocked. And then they said it's okay. But yeah, if you make a professional mistake, that day you gave the example of the inappropriate language that came up on the video.
Yeah.
Like, that
If
was
it was a more
mistake.
minor mistake, that an apology could
Go a long
yeah.
way. It could go a long way. I tell those stories that I might have told the class this story about a teacher one time who I got a call from a parent who said the teacher had called her daughter a loser, and her daughter was very upset. And she was, I think, in grade 7, and I thought, well, that's strange. So I go to talk to the teacher. I was like, hey, did you call her a loser? And he said, oh, I did.
Oh.
I said, oh, okay, well, tell me more about that. And he said, well, for a couple days in a row, she didn't have her textbook. And then that day she had said, well, I lost it. And he said, well, I guess that makes you a loser. And I was like, oh, well, that explains it. But she's upset. And so we have to own it, that you shouldn't have said that. And we have to fix it so that we can move on. And so we had the family come in, and he had a chance to explain it. But at the root of his explanation was an apology. And we were able to move on nicely from it. Like, it was a mistake. Sometimes with grade 7 and 8 students, we start to incorporate a bit of sarcasm, which is a little dangerous because they're sometimes not quite developmentally ready for that type of humor, right? And so we took a situation, wasn't a great decision, and we had a chance to explain, but also apologize and make sure that that wasn't going to happen again.
Apologies aren't like make or break. For example, it won't like, I feel like a lot of people perceive, because you're the teacher in the classroom, you're like quote unquote the boss. It's like a power dynamic might shift if you apologize to the students. Like all of a sudden, oh my God, you're human, instead of being the
Yeah.
boss that knows everything.
Apologizing to their parent if you've done something in class, and sometimes you just have to own it. Like, you made the mistake, it was a mistake, apologize for it, and then see what type of repair work you need to do to be able to move on from that. I think sometimes we forget the power of admitting when we've made a mistake and apologizing for it.
And students are so aware. Like, a student will call you out if you say something incorrect or anything like that.
They'll
Like,
call you out if you said something 5 months ago that they just
Yeah.
remembered.
Exactly. So, like, to sit there and say, no, I didn't say that, or no, that's not, like, it might just help just to say, like, you're right, I was wrong, like, I said that incorrect, and then you
It like
can
antagonizes
start-
yourself
yeah.
as well.
Well, and sometimes when the parent calls, they think it's like that I wasn't gonna believe them, right? That it was gonna become confrontational and it was actually simple because the teacher admitted it, explained it, but we still realized it was a mistake to do that, and then we were able to move on from it. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So one for you to talk about: send students home happy.
I agree. Don't end on a downer.
You know what makes students happy? Stickers. I know it seems so simple, but just even if it was just hard day, if you can send that student home so that they don't go home and start telling all the story about how terrible their day was, which then upsets their parents, if we can work hard to send them home happy, sometimes it's hard, but send them home happy.
Something's better than nothing.
Contribute one meaningful thing to your school. Run something.
Do a club.
Enrich the school. And I know that's outside of the contract, and you don't have to do that. But it just is important if you can do one meaningful thing. Some people say, oh, I coach everything. I don't think that's what we're asking. If every staff member contributes one meaningful thing, it makes a pretty amazing school for kids.
Yeah. And I had one person in my school, it was like they were just the staff room person that during the winter, brought like little winter games to the staff room, like little poke a marshmallow with a pin or something. Like that person was making the breaks of the teachers' enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think the one meaningful thing can be one meaningful thing for students, or it can be one meaningful thing
Yeah, for your
for the
coworkers.
staff culture or for the community culture. Yeah, if you can bring one meaningful thing. I think to tie into that, sometimes in interviews when candidates are asked, what will you do? How will you contribute to the school? Sometimes people will say, I'll do anything. But I was never looking for the person who will do anything. I was looking for the person who
had
does
a
something
concrete
really
idea.
well. Come and contribute one thing well. Be the knitting club leader. Be the drama person. Be the choir and do a good job of it. Make it meaningful.
I think even as a teacher candidate, it makes the experience so much more fun. Like even thinking outside of you're in an interview and you can say like, I helped with this. When I was at my practicum, I did the breakfast club 2 days a week.
Yeah, great.
And it was just so much fun to, first you get to talk to a lot of the teachers there and you get to hear kind of their perspective because there was usually a teacher and an EA helping out there as well. But also you get all the students that are coming down to the breakfast room to come get their pieces of toast and you're talking to them. And then I ended up, there was one student that he was in an older grade, but like he would see me in the hallways and I was my class was in the basement, so I was by myself like with the teacher and like kind of all that, but we didn't have other classes with us, and he would come down, come say hi, like he would, if he saw me in the hallway, like give me a high five, like, so you kind of build relationships outside of just your small little bubble.
And like you might end up being, doing the breakfast program twice a week, you might be the most important person in that student's life. Like sometimes we underestimate how important that is. Having one caring adult in the school is a really important predictor of students feeling connected and like they belong. And it could just be that simple. Right?
It could be that simple.
It could be that
One
simple.
piece of toast a week.
Yeah.
Changing life.
Changing lives
Yeah.
through toast. All right, we're almost done. Choose a strong mentor. And don't forget that when you're a teacher, you have positional power. And so use it really carefully for good.
Yeah.
There you go. That's my little list.
People would pay good money for that advice, so
Would they?
maybe,
I don't know.
probably.
If
Some people are
nothing
like,
else
oh,
from this,
blah, blah, blah.
if nothing else from this conversation, that list I think is very important.
Yeah.
The list could be sort of like the first 12 weeks of the program, because it's sort of like theory-ish. And then, but sometimes I'll kind of go through it with students. Like I said, I do it in a presentation. Then that kind of list kind of sinks in a little bit deeper. Or people disagree. You can disagree with my list too, or have things to add to it, or
Yeah. Make your own list.
make your own list. Right. Have your own list of the really important things that you think is good for the profession for people coming out of the program.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the list. Me and Scott,
Hey,
we're
the
absorbing as much
list.
information as we could.
We should take a picture of the list.
Put it at the end. But for the last and final question, what is the most important thing you think teacher candidates should know as they move through their career?
It's a great job. Some of you will do your master's, some of you will go on to be your doctorate, maybe some of you will write textbooks on learning and education and become professors.
Yeah, or the curriculum.
Here in the program, come back and that's an important element coming out of the program too, I think. Develops us all different ways.
For those that have watched all the way to the end,
Yeah.
objectively, this episode has the most information dense out of all of them. Very suitable topics of discussion for you to comment on today. So
Yeah, thanks for having me. Keep up the good work.
awesome. Well, that's about it. See ya. Say bye, Scott.
Bye.